What evil lurks in the dark? A question we have all asked ourselves many times. Together, we can start uncovering the truth and mystery behind the darker side of the otherworldly. And now your host of See You in the Dark, Michelle Roos.
Good evening and welcome to See You in the Dark. I'm your host, Michelle Roos. I am actually going to introduce myself tonight so everyone will understand why my episodes will be going down more of the darker side of things, whether it's paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, and all those things that go bump in the night. Again, my name is Michelle Roos. I will be the host of this new show that will premiere here tonight. And then as we keep growing, we will have special guests on talking about the darker side of everything that is bump in the night. Let's start by saying it was not a once upon a time in a storyline. I was a child growing up in Europe, and back in, let's say, the late 60s, early 70s, and paranormal or anything otherworldly was never spoken about. But everybody had those imaginary friends, the ones that would come and they'd share a sandwich with or a toy with. But my imaginary friends were always super, super spooky. They would come with blood dripping off of them or be wet, and they'd always want to take my toys and sit and talk. Sometimes you would see some of their skin gone, and I was always terrified, like living in a nightmare on a continuous basis. Now, when you did speak about it, you would always hear you can't be telling lies or fables, and your imagination is just going crazy. So as I started growing up, I was constantly jumpy, thought I was going crazy, couldn't figure out anything that was going on. Nothing made sense to me. When I was walking in stores, when I was walking all over the place, I was like, I didn't know if somebody was real or not real. I would be caught talking to myself. And I think my parents at that time thought something must be really, really bad. I started hiding all my dolls, all my toys. I would come home from school, they'd all be back on my bed. I'd hide them again because I didn't want to play with none of it. I didn't want to encourage anything because I was terrified. It went, I would say, probably years down the road. I would always go down to the corner, grab some bread, some lunch meat, bring it home for lunch. That was my chore every day. Did this for years. And one day I come running home, scared to death, trying to figure out why this guy in a car was trying to pull me in, trying to entice me, and I was crying. It was so scary, but he didn't look right. He was very grayish looking and, he had a hole, and I wasn't sure what all that meant. I went and spoke to my grandma and was telling her the story. And you got to remember, our parents always tell us never to talk to strangers, never take anything from strangers, and always run and yell. And that's what I did. So then they started calling the police and everything else. And they just kept pushing me, saying, "Are you sure this is what you've seen?" And I was crying and begging them to believe me. Well, it finally came to a point where I was like, nobody's going to believe what I'm seeing. Nobody's going to believe anything. And then I just shut down, living in my own nightmare years and years. So as I got older, things started progressing even more. It got to the point where I couldn't do anything. I got to the point where I wanted to stay under my covers. And let me tell you, I still do not take my feet out from under the covers because you never know what's going to touch them from the bottom. And to this day, I still don't. But I did find out that I wasn't going crazy, that there was some kind of message there, something I was supposed to do. And as I was starting this journey, things started opening up to me. So we go back to when I ran because this man was trying to really pull me into his car. Now, mind you, there was a little girl in the back seat already, but he was scary. I knew not to go. The reason they didn't believe me was because that man was already dead. And I was seeing a replay of him taking a small child. When I heard this, I knew at this time there is a reason why I was being shown everything, but not shown in a way of a lot of your mediums out there that will see grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles. I see the actual spirits who have had no voice. The man wasn't the one that didn't have the voice, it was the little girl in the back seat. But since he scared me so bad, I never was able to find out what her message was. And it was really her trying to show me what had happened to her and never found out if the little girl survived. So this became a second part of my nightmares. Nightmares every night, not wanting to go to sleep, trying to stay up all night. You know, you're in your 20s and 30s and you're going out, you're having a good time, but I never wanted those good times to stop because I knew I had to go home and the lights would go out and everything would start coming at me. So then I decided it's really time for me to start a journey, try to figure out what is all of this? Why is it happening to me? And why do I not get to see the most beautiful angels and the white lights and everything else? So I started digging and digging, and I actually put myself in a really dark tunnel of, like we always say, going down that rabbit hole. I couldn't find out where do I fit in. So I slowly started listening to some of these spirits. And then I had started recognizing these spirits were the ones that had no voice in life and were taking, beatings. They were murdered. They had killed themselves because they felt like in life they weren't heard and they want to be heard now. So as I keep wandering down this rabbit hole, I'm trying to figure out where do I fit in? Why me? What is the story? And how do I tell their story and people believe it? We have been all, put in school to say, okay, your history books, this is the word, this is the truth, this is how it worked. But there was so much other history that happened behind the scenes. And how do you tell that part of a history or somebody's story that did not fit the narrative? So at this point, I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing this. So I started looking into demonology, looking at the darker side of things. Now, to really explain that to you is the reason I went that way is not because of a name or what will it do for me, because it's not something that I do for a job. I'm actually in finances. That's another nightmare, and that's a different story down the road. But I had to use something to go more on the darker side, understand it, because there were times that I would actually just look at something and go, this looks like a creature. This looks like it has 4 or 5 arms. It's really black and dark and it's coming at me. But why? And then I had to figure out, are these really demons? Are these creatures? What are they? So as I'm studying this demonology and starting to kind of just get myself comfortable, I felt like I was starting in the right place. And as I was starting that journey, I kept looking up more things and then started working with energy based things to find out, is it, energy that is trapped? Is it forming itself? What are all these things? The questions just kept coming and coming. And I will tell you, I still don't have all the answers because I'm still learning every day. New things happen, but I'm starting to recognize where I fit in. So I fit in both on that darker side, but I also fit into the light. And if I can actually tell the story of that person who didn't have a voice, then I can take them from their dark side, which I've always thought was mine, and take them to the light where they actually can have real peace. I keep thinking over and over, how do I do this? How do I get into all of this? Why are they coming after, the living? Are they there to hurt them? Or are they just wanting to speak and they just don't really know how to do it? So then I just kept going down that road, and next thing I know, I'm an exorcist. And the reason I decided to do that is all we have is good and evil, angels and demons. Well, as a lot of people know, everybody has demons. It can either be self manifested demons, demons because the way you were in life, and then, of course, your biblical demons. And then as I started going down that journey, I had noticed that in all different faith base or religions, there's demons all over. And they were attacking people. People were allowing them to come in. How do we stop this? How do we put that virtual of both sides, the living and the dead? Because as you go now, we're all in one. Somehow, those dimensions have crossed and became one. As I started working with some of the churches and trying to help the people in need, I noticed that spirit was coming out even more. Not the people that were living, but the spirits themselves. And then the darker side of the demons that I'll call them were coming at me. They were constantly messing with me. They would make me self-doubt. They would keep saying, "No one's gonna believe you." And I kept coming back to that one story, the evil man in the car with the little girl in the back seat going, is gonna be what it's gonna be for me? Is this how I'm gonna constantly be able to do this? Is every time I tell somebody it's not a narrative, it's not gonna be true? How do I fix these things? Well, then as I'm stepping back and looking at all of this, I went down a very, very dark road. I lost myself. I was trying so hard to make sure that I didn't feel crazy, that I was putting myself in situations that I should not have been there because I wasn't listening to what was being put in front of me. I wasn't listening to the signs or the spirits who were saying, this is what you're supposed to be doing. I started getting myself wrapped up in things of, just opening up, believing everything I was hearing from everybody, trying to absorb all of it just so I could make sense to myself. My mind started playing tricks on me daily. I didn't even know how to function. I would be driving, I couldn't control things. I mean, it was getting to the point where I was ready to put myself and get myself locked up. As I was going through all this one night, I was just kind of just sitting there and was like, at some point, do I medicate myself or do I just start really listening from what's within? And I had to really soul search inside me. Now, again, we all want to hear that we're great at things, that we're doing a good job. And the more I was hearing that from the outside, the more I was drawn into different areas that was constantly taking me off the path that I was supposed to go. I went in and I started thinking, okay, there's got to be a story here. There has to be something that's gonna make sense for everything. That one aha moment, the one that we all want. It's kind of like we're always on a path. We're always trying to find a place. And where is our place? It's not going to be in your home. Your place is not going to be at your job. Where is your spiritual place and what do you need to do with that? And that's when I had to tear myself apart from inside out and start rebuilding it or rebirthing, as some would say, and then figure out what is Michelle's purpose. Not what is everybody else's purpose, but what is Michelle's purpose. So as I kept going with all of this, I started figuring out that I do not follow the narrative. I don't follow an actual history book. I don't follow what might be at the county seat of what actually was there in that home. I don't follow the narrative of what really was happening in some of these hospitals and asylums back in the day that was not put on the books. I was not part of any of that. I was at the part of I speak for spirit. I am their voice. Whether someone believes it or not, I have to speak their truths. If a woman was taken away from this world because of an abusive husband, I'm telling her story, the story she could never tell, the cries that she could never show out loud because she would either get it more from him or no one would believe her, or they would ridicule her of why are you still there? Why don't you just leave? Why don't you do this? So that voice was taken from her from the first time that she might have ever gotten hit. So it was my job to sit and listen to her. It was my job to make her not feel guilty for actually staying there and for her to find the peace that she actually deserved. And that is when I started this journey of now I know what my purpose is. And the stories that come out, the names, the forgotten, that is where Michelle was supposed to be. As I started doing this, I had noticed that the inner side of Michelle was actually starting to grow, was starting to be fulfilled, was starting to make sense of life itself. Now, you guys have to remember when someone is going through a journey like this, knowing that you can see the other side and start seeing it as more of that nightmare, you start doubting your own self. And so I was there in the dark with them. I was at my lowest points. I would rather hear all the lies and everything around me because that made more sense. But when I did that first time, that very, very first time of listening to a woman's cry to tell the story or show the story of what really happened was the day that I was reborn. And maybe you're asking yourself, what does she mean by reborn? Well, Michelle was never Michelle. There was no Michelle. It was an empty shell. It was the most darkest, depressing time of just walking around, not feeling anything, just emptiness because you didn't know where you were supposed to be. And when I was reborn and looked at it and said, now I know life's purpose, that is when my journey decided to go from 0 to 60 right overnight. Now, going on this journey, yes, I was doing okay listening to spirit, but sometimes it gets overwhelming. So again, I had to learn my protections, what can be done, what are the lines, where do I stop them? Because they will just feed on you. And that's something a lot of people don't understand. They think it's great if you can talk to spirit, but when you're talking a lot more, and I know a lot of your mediums and psychics, they get very drained too with all the energy getting pulled. But when you start working on that darker side of it, because of all the sadness, the anger, the depression, it actually pulls even harder on you. And when you're trying to give as much as you can to make sure that they're not silent anymore, you have to learn that you are important, you know? And I was forgetting that I was important. And so it was getting to the point where it was making me even physically ill. And again, all these places that I was going on these different journeys and different things, I wanted to make sure that I was able to tell their story, but I also wanted to make sure that I was around to tell their story. And also not let it take care or take over me emotionally. Emotionally draining, depressive states, making sure I balanced everything. And everyone thinks that, if you do this, it's like the most fantastic thing ever, but people don't realize there is a darker side to all of this because you have to balance both the living and the dead. And sometimes those stories of trying to get them to the light is so overbearing that you can feel it on a physical sense, on an emotional sense, that you're trying to navigate everything. It's almost like, when you're almost like a teeter-totter. You wanna keep it going, back and forth just correctly so one doesn't get bounced off or one stays up higher while the other one's lower. And when you're starting to work with your spiritual self on this, it is a struggle. You're probably sitting back just kinda thinking, "My God, what is this girl going through?" and all that. Please, I mean, I this is not just to talk about for people to feel bad or sorry, because I know I'm probably not the only one here that's gone through this or going through it. These are things that I finally had to step back and say, it's time to talk. It's time to find the darker side. All we hear is all the beautiful love and light and everything out there, but that's not true. It can become a love and light, but it can start with just the dark. And when I talk about the dark, I'm not just talking when we turn the lights off and it's nighttime outside. I'm talking about a dark that is this big, huge black hole that is just sucking you through it and putting you somewhere that you have never even would dream of going until you start knowing how to come out of it and balance it between both the light and the dark. As I started really working with all this, I kept trying to think to myself, there's got to be more. I know I'm not just a voice. I know I'm not just that person that can tell their story, but something else is going on because now I started noticing I'm just not getting spirit. I am getting things that are more horrifying than any scary movie out there. They were coming at me. I would get scratched. Things were hurting me. Where am I? What am I doing? You know, this was something that I had to learn again. And this is why when I said doing the demonology and being an exorcist was a way of me be able to just educate myself to find out if I use those tools, will it help me on the other side? I don't just have the word exorcist on my name or a demonologist on my name. I actually really went in and studied. Excuse me. And I did that not to be how many clicks do I get or how many people are going to talk to me, but it was a journey because I had to survive. and I want to survive. I want to be able to go out there and tell people there are real monsters out there. There are different types of monsters, whether it's your personal monster or something that somebody might have put on you or something that might have been open because of things that we might have done. But let me tell you, monsters are real, and monsters can hurt you. And that is why I went on this journey with this, because I know in that closet, under that bed, behind the shower curtain, wherever you might walk, there is a real monster, and they can be following you each day. Because I know there's a lot of us over there that have them. But for right now, let's take a small break and we'll come back and finish the story of the monsters.
Are we alone in the universe? The most important question facing humanity is on the verge of being settled once and for all. The Mutual UFO Network has been at the forefront of this journey for nearly 50 years. Our members worldwide are dedicated to the research, documentation, and awareness that will shape the future of humanity. Won't you join us?
And welcome back. You're listening to See in the Dark with your host, Michelle Roos. As we were talking earlier, we were talking about the monsters. Well, my monsters started getting really big. My monsters were attacking me. My monsters were not what I was seeing before, and I definitely had to make sure I figured out what this was. I did it once before, I was going to do it again. So, as I started talking with some of the churches and talking about demons and monsters and the way I would see some of these creatures leeching out on people as I'm walking down the street, I was starting to see the real dark side. And again, these were self manifested type of monsters, which then I started realizing these were things that were done because of our emotions, our angers, our sadnesses. And because that is more easier for us to hold on to than something that's super happy. If it's negative, it feels like we just kind of draw that in like a sponge. And it started making these creatures that are just kind of leeching off of us. So I went on my first exorcism. And again, I am like a lay exorcism. So I'm not going in, running through the doors with this big cross and saying, "Demon, be gone." I do go through all the proper channels. They call me in to look to see, are these real demons coming at these people? Is it oppression? Is it a possession? It's actually, what is it before we go on? Because I will tell you, a real exorcism could actually kill someone. So when we talk about those things and we talk about spirit, and remember, as I was talking earlier on, the darker side of the spirits do show themselves. But then you also have the other side. If you have the abuser or the person who might have committed a murder or who has always been very nasty in life, they were actually showing themselves to me as those creatures. So going in, making sure that we have all the documents correct, was able to start seeing what was actually hurting these people, what was putting someone in oppression. Why was this person thinking they're being possessed? And then be able to, kind of spread it out a little bit and say, okay, we're not working with a full possession, but here's what we are working with, and these are the things that we can do to heal you. Instead of putting somebody, fully through something that can be so excruciating, I had to make sure that I was saving both sides. And I got to tell you, when you're dealing with those nasty monsters, it's not just a little bit of sage, couple of prayers, and then they're poof, they're gone. That is actual real battle. That is battle, good and evil. Spiritual warfare, guys, is real. It is one that we're not all ready for, and it's been out there. I mean, you think about it. If you go on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, wherever you go, and someone puts something negative or something about themselves that just sounds so horrible, all sorts of clicks, all sorts of comments, everything. But when you put something very positive out there, it is really hard nowadays for people because they struggle to actually say, "Thank you, that made my day," or "Thank you, I needed that little ray of sunshine." But if we say, "Oh, this person hurt me, they're evil, they're this," oh my gosh, it will just keep going and going just like a virus. But that's how it was back in the day too, without social media. You'll have somebody that will actually, was out in the public and everybody loved them and they were the greatest person ever, best doctor around. But behind closed doors, that doctor was doing things that shouldn't be done. But no one would actually believe that because of what they actually put in front of you. And that's how it goes all the time. So, as I'm going through all this, and I will tell you, working as an exorcist, working in this field, especially trying to take care of myself, you're always going to end up losing someone, whether you're starting to lose yourself again or losing someone because you couldn't get to them quick enough, and then living with that guilt. To this day, I cannot get that little girl out of my mind. She's never come back. She's never come around. And I feel that guilt every day of I wish, I wish, I wish. And those wishes were, I wish I knew what I know now because she needed something said. So I don't know if she was ever lost or they've never found her. I have looked and looked and looked and can find nothing. So I'm not sure what might have happened to her. But it happens a lot in this time too, where people have gone missing and they can't find them. They're coming to me, but they can't really tell me where they're at. And I am just frustrated. I'm seeing what happened to them. And I can't take you where they're at because they're trying to tell you, but they can't. I go to people who think they're possessed, and I know it's not a possession, but they are so far gone in it that I can't save them either. So there is that second part of the darker side of things that actually become a reality. We have to be careful when we speak about certain things. Like I said earlier, it's all about the narrative. If it doesn't fit it, nobody wants to hear it. If we could get people to kind of just a little bit put one foot outside that box. Working with the paranormal, all you hear is, well, they're only good spirits here. Only the good spirits are here. So you got to be very kind because they're just good spirits. Well, the dark spirits can act like good spirits too. And so we all go in, running into these buildings, doing different things. All these spirits are good. And then you find out you're about to go face to face with the mother of all mothers, the biggest darkness you'll ever see, and you have no clue what to do with it. Been there, done it, and I will tell you, I've gotten thrown a couple of times, and not just thrown physically, but emotionally. My journey keeps going further and further, and newer things are happening to me. And I can tell you straight up, I don't have a clue what's going on yet. But what I do know is when I say I speak for spirit, I'm going to tell their truth. I'm going to tell their story. I want to put them at peace so they can finally find their light, the light that they need to follow. And if there are the demons out there that want to keep coming at me, I'm going to send them right back where they belong. But to know I will never be doing it alone. I always have someone with me. I always make sure I have a team of people, whether it's the churches, whether it's the team, but I don't go in anymore to a home to help people, to any locations with the concept of everything's love and light. I go in knowing this time I'm calling out the dark before I see the light so I know what I'm dealing with. And sorry if I get a little choked up, but it's been something that, weighs, I bet, on all of us. I know I'm not the only one. I'm not that lone survivor of, oh my God, the stuff that you see. But if you're out there and you need help, please let me know. I would love to have you on the show. It's time that we start speaking for those that didn't have a voice. We do that a lot for the living, but I think it's time we do it also for the dead. Because I feel that the more of those spirits we can save, the better we all will feel. We don't need a trophy. We don't need plaques and we don't need people just oohing and aahing and wanting to take pictures with you. What we're needing is to have the people like myself that'll be like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to help this family. I'm going to get that monster out of their house. And to see them smile and give me a hug and say, my God, nobody else would do it because we wouldn't let them have the cameras and be the next show is the best feeling that I've ever had. And, you're probably seeing like I do. I deal with, haunted objects. I deal with sometimes them rushing up at me with half their face gone or their jaw hanging, you know, or if somebody was beaten, seeing the broken bones, the different things, the car accidents. If you really look at that, you have to remember to yourself, they need us as much as we're out there looking for them, and they're always here. But you also have to remember you have to take care of number one, and number one is you. Because if you don't, you're going to be eaten alive. And that's on a spiritual side. And you also have to go in thinking, too, which has been a very hard thing for me to do. You can't save everybody. And that's for both the living and the dead. So remember, the guilt can get you on both sides. And trying to go over that hurdle to know what you're supposed to do is one of those things that you're going to have the hardest time dealing with. And if you say you don't, I want to know what medicines you're taking because you might want to pass them on down my way. Because at this point, the daily struggle is just making sure that I'm surviving, that I feel valued from myself, not valued from everybody else. Because a thank you, a hug, a handshake, that makes everybody feel good. But I have to always find the value in myself. Again, this thing has just been, on and on and on. And it's just, you've got to try to remember that working as a demonologist, working in the paranormal field, working with cryptids, working with anything, be prepared to always go for the dark before the light because that's really what's showing you more. But we are just trying to put blinders on. In this show that will be airing every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to go down that journey together. Whether we're talking the paranormal, talking about aliens, cryptids, anything. I mean, even, listen, just like fairies, they're not all good. So I would love for each and every one of you to join me each week to talk about some of the darker side of things. And even if it's talking about personal dark sides, is this real? Am I going crazy? Any of that. You can always send me a message and say, hey, Michelle, some of the things you've said has been great. Could we kind of, touch base on some of this kind of stuff? And absolutely, I won't be putting anything on the show that I don't know much about. And again, I don't know much about aliens, but I've heard a lot of stories of people who have had darker sides of things going on with aliens than all of the love and light again. And I'll keep continuing with the journeys that I am on. They're going in different directions, I'm telling you guys. This is not a one-way street. This is go down the street to the fork, make a left, go around a whole bunch of bends. You probably end up right back where you started, and then you decided, oh, it was my other left, and keep going. Well, that's kind of where I'm at, but it's been a great feeling because I'm actually now in the driver's side. I am actually telling people's stories that need to be told. I have found out in a lot of locations I've went, they don't ever tell you there might have been, the ladies of the night or mobsters or anything else. And when those things start coming out, that's when I get super excited because I'm like, okay, the real stuff is coming. And the real stuff will be on here too. There's going to be a lot of people that will probably disagree with me. There'll be a lot of people who will try to say, no, that doesn't happen. That's not how it is. But that's okay because I invite those people also. I want to learn. I'm always learning. I'm not an expert. I will tell you, I have lost myself. I've lost others. I have struggled when I deal with people that have committed suicide from the other side because I can't get them to the light all the time like I would love to. So, definitely not going to call myself a professional, but I will call myself a realist because if you're ready to start hearing some of the truth, or does it resonate with you? Does any of it even make sense to you? And oh my God, I've always wanted to say something, but I didn't want to because I didn't want people to think I was weird, crazy, or just lying. This is the show for you. And I would love just to have anybody come on here with me and let's talk about the real. Let's talk about our inner struggles. Let's talk about, yes, I give love notes as a medium, but sometimes other things come out and I don't know how to maybe even pass that on to the living because the living don't want to hear if grandma was mad at you because you stole a piece of jewelry out of her drawer and she knew it. They just want to hear grandma loves you and she's in a safe place. But I can't sit here and just think that's all those kind of love notes are. There's gotta be that little dark side just peeking around the corner because grandma might really love you, but I'm gonna tell you she's probably really damn pissed off because you did something that she never thought you would do. So as I keep talking and introducing myself, I am Michelle. I'm gonna be the host of this new show, See You in the Dark. This show is gonna be a little bit more raw. This show is gonna kinda push some buttons, but it's never gonna be disrespectful. It's never gonna put somebody down. Everybody has their own beliefs, their own way of doing things. But what I will be telling is the truth that belongs to me, the truth that belongs to spirit. And if there's truths about demons, monsters, things that go bump in the night, I am definitely going to be telling you those too. But the great thing is, I'm going to have some amazing guests that will be coming on later down the road. Guests that will be talking about their darker side of things. Guests that you wouldn't even think that would speak about some of that stuff are actually going to come on and talk about some of the things they've seen. And remember, because of my journey and what I had to find, my own self, this is why we're talking about these things. Because I think it's time, if we bring it out in the open, that more spirits will be able to come forth to others who maybe seem just like me. Others who are just like, okay, that didn't make sense, so I'm ignoring it, going, okay, wait a minute. Now I understand it is a real thing. So it's going to help all of us, but it's also going to open up eyes and ears of others who can say, you know what, these were things I was seeing. These are things that I did really feel, but I never wanted to say anything because people wouldn't believe me. And I know I keep going back and forth about truth, beliefs, and religions and different things like that. But if you start venturing into the world of paranormal, it doesn't just mean ghosts. It means everything out there, everything otherworldly, things that cannot be explained. But we got to sit back. We can't kid ourselves. It's not one where we think in every little area we go, it's always going to be beautiful sunshine, unicorns, sunflowers, because you're going to come up to one of those monsters. And so being prepared for something like that, if we can just all be prepared for anything, I mean, it will also set everything in stride for you in the living because I go into everything now. I used to go in always thinking, oh, everybody loves me, everybody likes me, I'm okay, I'm this, I'll give, 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 just like I was giving my energy to spirit. Found out that's not a real thing on both sides. So, knowing now that I go in going, "Okay, I'm gonna see the darker side of everybody," so when that light comes through, that is just a special bonus for me. So, as we start talking a little bit about the story of my life and how things have all evolved, I could go more and more in detail of all the crazy things I've seen, the phantom cars on the road, seeing them go off the road, different things like that. Um, it just comes down to what am I going to take in, what I'm going to give out, how am I going to deal with this, and who can I deal it with? Yes, I see them all in the point of when they were killed or when they killed themselves. But at the same time, their spirit still has a time where they need to do a finish. And, I'm gonna tell you, Walmart's already scary enough, but go to Walmart and see a whole bunch of dead people. That's scary. And they don't have anything on social media to be able to put up there and say, "Look at what we found at Walmart." But when you look at those, the last places these people go, and we have to remember, they could have died somewhere else, but they're coming towards you. They're coming towards me, and they're wanting to be heard. So we need to step back and remember we're talking about spirits. We're talking people who had no voice, who are screaming for help. So even if they were passed away in New York at the subway, they're going to find you at the Walmart because they want to be heard. And we have to be real careful about that because that's where we get lost. That's where I got lost. Well, this person shouldn't be here. They didn't fit with it. This is what I heard. And that's when you're gonna start going down that darker hole because you're trying to put them in a situation of, "You didn't belong here." And then you're going right back to their voice not being heard. I would love to hear from a lot of you to tell me some of your stories. You can always message me. You can follow me right on Facebook. You can actually just send a private message and say, "Here's my story." We can talk about it, and then we can always air it. We don't always have to give your name, but I would definitely love to know if there's more people out there like me, more people who are a little bit crazy in a good way. Just remember, in a good way. We're crazy in a good way. People who feel like they have attachments but don't understand why. People who have done things that they've regretted and now it's bringing a darker entity around them. You guys are the people I want to talk to. You guys are the ones I want your stories. We can talk to all sorts of celebrities and all sorts of people who've, written books, made movies, TV shows. I want to talk to the real. I want to talk to you guys. I want to know what scares you. And let's work on this together. As we start closing the show tonight, next week, I will be tapping more into the darker side of the paranormal, talking about some of the stories that happened, not just going into, abandoned buildings, but also families that had darker entities in their homes, not just the next door neighbor rummaging through their cabinets. As we go further down, darker down this rabbit hole of the paranormal, again, I want to thank everyone that's listening and let you know you still have an open invitation. We can sit and chit chat. I want to know your stories. I'm going to tell you mine, but I'm also going to give a twist to those darker sides. We're also going to learn together what great protections we can do. Not your everyday, just salt, sage, a little bit of spray, but we're really going to talk about how to educate yourself with the protection you need when you're doing things. And it's also great for the daytime when you're at a regular job, because you know how it is. There's energy vampires all over. And again, you just have to kind of protect yourself in that situation too. I just would like to take this minute to thank each and every one of you who have listened and who will be listening. I am thankful that I've gotten this opportunity to tell a little bit about my story. I didn't want to tell it all today, but just give you an idea of who I am, how I think, and why I'm going down this road. And to thank you guys for your time and to let you know that I'll see you in the dark. Till next time, this is Michelle Roos sending you guys all lots of love, and I will see you down the road.